Give us, for now, one reason either why Rick Scott won the Republican primary for governor or Bill McCollum lost.
Well, maybe the answer lies in both areas there. I think maybe Scott doesn't get into that race to start with if there was a real formidable candidate, in his estimation at least, and you can't overlook the amount of money spent by Scott and his campaign in order making himself known to Florida voters.
All right, John, we'll go around the table.
Sure. Well, I think a lot of the Republican establishment is saying, "Oh, it's just money. It's Scott spent $50 million and that did it." But I think to some degree, Scott's message wasn't bad either. That let's get to work theme and a fresh face in this kind of economy, in a state with the kind of unemployment we've seen, I think that paid off. I think people listened and they're ready to roll the dice on somebody new.
Mary Ellen.
Well, I think the reason Rick Scott won and the reason Bill McCollum lost was because of Bill McCollum. I think that Bill McCollum's campaign was not well done. He let Scott go for a very long time to define himself on television. I mean, admittedly, Scott put a ton of money into this race, an estimated $50 million. Nonetheless, Bill McCollum ran a very bad campaign, and I think in the end, all the money that was put into his race was because they were trying to prop him up and salvage what they could, and it didn't work.
All right, and you, David?
I think it was $50 million that got him on TV early, often, and as John said, with a message that resonated. And Scott came at the right time. I mean, there's no question there's some sort of undefinable malaise out there. It could have to do with the Obama healthcare law. It could have to do with the economy, but there's some sort of feeling out there in the electorate that things just aren't right, and that's a good time for an outsider candidate who's talking differently to come along and spend a ton of money to get on TV.
Steve, I'd like to make a further point on that, and that is that Bill McCollum has been a very well-known Republican for 3 decades in the state of Florida. Spent 20 years in Congress. He's run statewide 4 times. In a Republican primary, he gets basically 2 out of every 5 votes. These are the people that know him most and should support him. 2 out of 5 in his own party. So I think to what Mary Ellen says, he didn't even really have much support in the area that he had to have a lot of support.
He didn't have a ground game. His fundraising base was very slim. It was evident because he wasn't raising the money, so in the end he had to rely on these giant checks from corporations funneled through these 527s. To me it was we should have saw this coming, but everybody put their hopes on him, and we kind of thought, well, they know better than we do. But
yeah, because that's the thing with McCollum too. I mean, he wasn't Little Orphan Annie running against Rick Scott. McCollum and these committees that were all funded by corporate Florida spent about $23 million on behalf of McCollum. That's a record as well. Of course, okay, Scott doubled that money, but still, they tried very hard to elect Bill McCollum and failed miserably.